Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle. Me, in my series Freemasonry and Satanism, a continuation of Theosophy and Social Reconstruction. By the people, Helena Blavatsky, Alice Bailey, Annie Besant, and many others who went to India, Tibet, China, studied the Buddhism, Hindu religion, came back to the England, United States, created the Theosophic Society, a study and understanding of all religions to, I guess, mesh them together to get one religion. You've all seen those stickers on cars where they have a little picture of all the different religions. And they created the Lucifer magazine, and they also created the Lucifer Publishing Company, and are the ones behind a lot of the New Age material, where apparently ascended masters or masters in the cosmic realm, beings from beyond, are communicating with people. Beautiful pictures. A religion unto itself. You are God, you are love. Christianity is a myth. Aleister Crowley, the law of one law, do as thou wilt. The man who was into child sex magic, sex with children, even sacrifice killing children. Makes one wonder. And he was a member of the Rosicrucian, Golden Dawn, created his own organizations. And so all this promotion. So when you read a book like this that was in 1912, Social Reconstruction, and I think they're going to try to social reconstruct the world by crashing, destroying the entire system. That's what it seems like. So much for their benevolence towards humanity. They're the ones that are working or controlling the United Nations. So as I read this book, remember who they are. Remember the Hegelian dialectic. They do things and say things that are not true to try to bring about a result. And we know they want the New Age and the New World Order. So much is going on in the world today. June 28th, 2016. So, who that knows the life of poor men and women in this country has not been struck, not with their vices, which are obvious and simple, but with their virtues and their courage under so great difficulties and trials? How many people, middle class, poor people, struggle their entire life just to have, like in 2008, and apparently looming here in 2016, the money people, the banksters, the Zionist Jewish folks, and others, to crash the system and take everything that they've earned, and destroying people's entire lives for 100,000 years. Wars created intentionally to control the population and depopulate the area for the unwanted, useless food eaters, for these people who rule our planet. All of these evil conditions prevent well-being. All of these conditions must be changed. But social effort to change physical conditions will not be enough. We need a social moral change, the growth of a public opinion, that shall make underpayment realized as the parasitic and theft of life, which it is that shall make it necessary that employees do not wait for the law to pass upon them, but hasten to point the way to needed changes by their own social experiments. So when an employer, like Walmart, I've said before, opens up a new super Walmart just across the city line to avoid a living wage law in that city, they're being parasitic on society and causing the pain and suffering to the people. To avoid a 40-hour work week, to avoid paying medical insurance. And I believe this book, this material, these Theosophist Society people, along with the other mystery school of Babylon, cosmic religion folks, into the many gods, paganism, Luciferian, Satanism, Moloch, Ra, Osiris, Isis, Horus, and so many names for these demonic beings. They know full well what they're doing, and they're saying these nice words in this book to reel the public in, the people, into this one world organization. Wait till you hear what it says here. It is necessary for well-being both that underpayment and insecurity should be abolished. And it may as well be realized abruptly that those are revolutionary changes. There you go, key word. Russian Revolution that killed 100 million people, they say. World War I, World War II in Germany, how many millions? Fooling the Americans to get into both of those wars, how many people suffered and died? Chinese Revolution with Mao, how many millions died? French Revolution, United States war between the North and the South, probably artificially created, taking a lot of people's rights, killing a lot of people. All the countries taken over in South America, Central America, Africa, the world. I think England once controlled all of India and China. What gave them the right? Yet nothing less will suffice, revolutionary changes. But it must also be realized that no one change will achieve our object. Underpayment and insecurity can only be guarded against by a large number of detailed alterations in law, in custom, in method of business organization, inspired by the general principle. But this general principle, that well-being, including security, for all without exception, must be the foundation of the state, must be accepted by every political party and by public opinion, and every government in office must accept the responsibility of providing for this well-being in every case and in all cases, by ordinary means or by unusual means, no excuse being accepted for failure. The demand for the acceptance of this responsibility by the nations might well become the basis for a Theosophist politics. Oh, so these Luciferians want to get into politics, which they've already been, because the Illuminati, Freemasons, and Zionist Jewish folks and all those have been controlling our politicians for a long time. They try to keep it hidden from you and me. For it takes him beyond any ordinary party and bases his politics on the first need of the nation, the financial stability and the security of its workers. Nothing less will suffice. In some way, we must guarantee a regular and certain living wage to all. It is useless to provide houses men cannot afford to rent, and an elaborate apparatus of life which is beyond them to live up to, because they lack the prime necessity, money. Arrange and organize life so that income is sure and we have a firm foundation for the state. All necessities can then be afforded and will be provided by private and public enterprise. And right now, they are talking about the Illuminati, Rothschilds, Rockefellers, and all those bankster elites, Zionist Jewish folks, along with a bunch of others in cahoots in the Masonic and cultist temples and lodges, that they have told these people, apparently the White Dragons of Japan, another lodge occult organization, that is seems like it's pretty powerful. But the Illuminati types, Freemasonic, Zionist, Jesuits, all those types, are saying to these White Dragons, according to Benjamin Fulford, that they want to amend their ways. And so they want to divide the world up into 5 countries or some other number, and base the currency on that country's commodities, and change everything, and how they select the rulers and all that. And I suppose part of this will be the mandatory microchipping of people. So there is computerized accounting of what anybody does, what anybody spends, where anybody goes. Something very bizarre. So they're seemingly like they're trying to change the perception of the same thing that they're trying to do. If I've learned anything by these people, they seemingly make a bunch of stupid mistakes, or they're so arrogant, they try to put symbolism out there for all of us to see, like they're laughing at us. Like little 911s on the Simpson cartoons, and so much more symbolism in cartoons and billboards and magazine articles with the women covering one eye and the people doing the devil sign at concerts and presidents and everybody else. The tattoos on people. I'm paying attention. I go out to my favorite jazz club, and it's all clearly demonic. There's no ways about it. It's all this New Age religion stuff tattooed on people's bodies. I suppose that does have some kind of demonic possession, witchcraft influence on them to put that label on yourself. Make sense? Alright, chapter 4, page 33. The main principles of social reform. Can't make this up. 1912, the Theosophic Society sponsored or was involved in the publishing of this Riddle of Life series, Theosophy and Social Reform. It's been going on for a while, as I've said, and as I've proven, and as I will continue to prove. It appears like it's about to come to a faster move forward fruition now with the things they're doing worldwide. How the changes we need are to be accomplished might well be left to expert discussion of special committees, but certain broad outlines have been made so clear by the Minority Report of the Poor Law Commission and other recent work that they can readily be indicated. Let's not forget that the Bilderberger groups just had their secret meeting, and they went through great lengths. If you go look up Alex Jones and other videos on YouTube, 2016 Bilderberger group meeting, and maybe that could be one of these special committees planning our future. Firstly, the labor forces of the country must be so organized as to abolish casual employment. Abolish casual employment? Minimize seasonal fluctuations in seasonal trades. Equalize trade fluctuations by reasonable distribution of national and municipal employment of labor over the year. Provide training colonies, where men waiting for further work can improve their efficiency. Provide sanatorium colonies and convalescent colonies for all in need of medical care. Wow. Sanatorium colonies. I guess people talking about the stuff I talk about will be declared mentally ill. How dare you say bad things about those people who are looking out for you and want to create a special place for you. Provide morally remedial and penal colonies for wastrels. Wastrels, I guess if you waste anything. Idlers. Whoa, did you see this? Moral, remedial, and penal colonies for idlers, drunken, vicious, and criminal persons. Well, that could be anybody that they deem. So they got FEMA camps all over the USA for morally remedial and penal colonies for wastrels, idlers, drunken, vicious, and criminal persons who probably won't want to give up their guns. With disorganization of labor coupled with drastic regulation of wages so that they never fall below the minimum level, and such inspection and regulation of industries as an extension of existing factory and mine regulation laws as may seem desirable. Among these measures, it may probably become necessary to assume government and municipal control of the prices of the chief necessities of life. So much for freedom. It is sometimes said that under these conditions, certain kinds of business could not be carried on. This is probably true, but this only means that the business in question are from our standpoint illegitimate, and therefore it might almost at once become necessary for the state to provide an organization which could manage such industries if they were socially, as apart from the employer's point of view, desirable. I guess that would include the drug trade. It is also possible that other industries whose conditions are tolerable or good at present would need to be regulated in order to control their rate of production and the prices of their products that might also lead to national or state ownership and control. So what really gets me is where, almost anywhere, has the state or town or city, country, shown itself to be providing competent and successful control. They're all greedy thieves. None of these changes, if they are requisite, need be shrunk from, for we are founding our building firmly on God's law for the world. And it is the present system, artificial and unmoral, which stands in the way. God's law for the world. So they're doing this comparative religion and trying to unite all the religions into one. So I'm just a tad bit curious, what God or gods are they talking about? Sorry for all my comments here, but I can't help it. I think. Therefore I am. The first I emphasized was the national responsibility for individual well-being. The second is for national responsibility for individual independence. It is the business of the state to guarantee well-being and security to all. Well, if you're an idler, you're going to a penal colony and a waster. You'll put your recycles out on the curb and you get caught slipping them in the trash. Penal colony for you, maybe. It is equally the business of the state to see that this is done by establishing the individual economic independence of all adults. The state cannot be the mother or father to all its children. So the state can't be the mother or father to all its children. So the state thinks that we are its children. For instance, the healthy upbringing of the nation's children can only be accomplished by having every home suitably circumstanced. Now there is a tendency at the present arising out of the terrible conditions existing at the low levels of our civilized life to put upon the shoulders of charitable organizations, of local authorities, or of the national government very many duties which are probably the duties of parents, legislation to secure the feeding of school children, and certain departments, e.g. cleanliness of medical inspection and treatment of school children, for instance. Well, we know that the child care and school systems have been plagued with crazy problems, including giving children perverted sexual books to read, watching homosexual films. Yeah, we need these people in control of everything. Just like I need a big bug on my face or something. I don't need that, and we don't need them. If they were to discontinue their controlling the politicians and our government and our money and causing the wars and being in the drug trade and all this other stuff, we would all be so much better off. Legislation and social action of this kind is inevitable at present and must be performed if only for the sake of the feelings of the ordinary humanity. But while in some ways such legislation points the way to an organization, e.g. medical inspection, which will be needed under any circumstances, in others the work done is simple and only to be regarded as better than nothing. It would be 10,000 times better to have every home so provided with a regular income that no child from that house needs school dinners at the public expense rather than have the child fed as it is presently. It may be said that meals at school are frequent and in many grades, many higher grade and secondary schools. Let us accept existing powers of action and use them to the best, but many present social and legislative devices must be regarded as purely temporary expedients for dealing with overwhelming evils. We must aim at individual and family independence of state and municipal aid, and for excellent reasons. Work done wholesale by large numbers of the poor is probably more frequent than not done badly. There's plenty of evidence, if you go look for it, and I've shown it in my videos, with the United Nations Meditation Room and other activities, biodiversity, sustainability, Agenda 21, global warming, global cooling, climate change, and so much more. That these people are in control of some of this activities right now with the United Nations to bring about this new age and new world order. And apparently, like the Phoenix Rising, as we saw in that song on Eurovision, which is the Europe's version of American Idol program where people sing. And the winner was Conchita Wurst. Long hair, split in the middle like Jesus with a beard. Looked just like Jesus in the head. And a silky dress on us, like a woman on the bottom. Conchita means a female part. Wurst means a male part. Sausage. And she was singing the word Phoenix Rising, has the words in that song, "You Can't Stop Us." Go look up Conchita Wurst Eurovision 2014. They're throwing this right in our faces. Look at that satanic ritual they did on that celebration with the opening of the longest tunnel through the Swiss mountains, the Alps. They even had a devil suspended, lowered by a rope, and all these people on tight body underwear, like they were naked, groping each other, and so much more grotesque things in that. Even the people, the newscasters monitoring it, publishing the ceremony, were aghast. Were saying, "What the heck is this?" when they were chatting amongst themselves. Crazy. The common necessities of life cannot be provided wholesale for children without the defects of the wholesale creeping. Frequently grave abuses creep in. For examples of which I may refer my readers to the reports of the Poor Law Commission, I think that's something they have over there in England. We have different names for these programs. Experience shows that the most efficient way to supply the needs of children is in small groups in scattered homes, that is, in artificially constructed families. Wow, artificially constructed families. Yeah, they would like to get their hands on the children. Many of these folks, from what I've learned in my studies, are into pedophilia. Which brings us back to the child's original family, the strengthening and supporting of which appears to be the most reasonable method of providing the suitable nest in which the child may gradually develop. But while we insist thus on independence, it must not be forgotten that it is economical independence we meant, not a visionary independence of character in impossible circumstances. So they want economical independence, not a versionary independence of character. So we can't have independence of character under this social reconstruction, this new age. Remember the movie Hunger Games? Another weighty reason for concentrating our attention on the securing of an individual and family economic independence is the common sense that it is little use protecting and guarding the child until he is 13 or 14, as we do now, by all kinds of special legislation, and then letting him loose into a state of unguarded degradation of conditions where he must inevitably soon relapse. So once they got you as a kid under their control, they don't want to let you loose. You might relapse. Guard the child through the parents, and not apart from him. In this way shall we secure the healthy foundation of independent individuals for our nation, instead of an insecure foundation of diseased, decrepit, demoralized slum dwellers. And in selecting the legislation we desire to see carried out, there is another danger we must avoid. The talking wears me out. Many earnest reformers are driven to socialism by their studies of social conditions, and as we have seen, a good deal of what is called socialism will be necessary. No socialist proposal should be accepted for immediate practical application unless it helps in our object. For example, nationalization of the railways will not touch our fundamental problems, and therefore must wait until we have solved them. For the time, if ever, when it is found to be desirable for itself. So the way they want to have it, I suppose, is like a robot human. They got penal colonies for the idlers, as we just read, in order that our world may become the ordered sphere for spiritual evolution, which it should be. Men must be provided with suitable physical bodies, and this means that with other suitable physical surroundings. But it is useless building good houses if men have not money to rent them, or improving sanitary conditions and education if the abyss of poverty and destitution remains, making the effort of all these good things as naught. The only effective way to secure our objects is to see that every adult individual is provided always under normal conditions with a wage at least sufficient for a self-respecting existence, and secondly, that any lapse from the normal is so dealt with as to prevent the possibility of even a hint of the approach of destitution. So I suppose if they're microchipping everybody, they'll be able to tell if your bank account is getting a little low and you're approaching on destitution. There'll be a knock on your door, or a phone call, or maybe even some arresting officers to take you to a penal column because you're an idler, you're not going to work. or you spent too much money on wine and went to a party. You're a drunken. Penal colony. There are countless reforms which may be attempted. Food reform, temperance reform, religious reform. If you believe in Jesus, shame on you. Religious reform is coming. Education reform. But all of these are secondary, and all must be done in their proper order. The first things first, the foundation first, and then the changes at the superstructure. This brings us to another general principle. Those whose need is greatest should be helped first. Isn't that nice? So the poor people get to be enslaved first. Lucky them. For the Theosophists, the belief that society is a great brotherhood. Haven't we been reading about the initiates and the Illuminati and the brotherhood? Society as the great brotherhood is a real and living thing. This brotherhood feels its life in all and rests upon those who are at the base of the structure and support the life of those above. So those at the base of the structure, the many, will support the life of those above. Hunger Games, the movie. The base and foundation of our civilization at present rests upon a morass, a slough of despond, a pit of destitution and of physical and mental demoralization, the miasma from which poisons all of our lives. How can we have order, beauty, love, and gentleness in a world founded on this disorder, ugliness, hatred, and brutality? Wow. A little windy out here. Much modern legislation shirks this problem of the abyss. Public health does not tackle measles and whooping cough, which are the two most deadly infectious diseases. This is 1912. Because the extent of the poverty and demoralization evil makes it impossible to treat them as scarlet fever or etheric fever are treated by ordinary public health machinery. The Labor Party fights for the special trade union legislation, but is hardly able to touch the lives of the great mass of the slum dwellers. Liberals, Tories, and Labor men are alike aghast at the evil, and alike apparently impotent to cure it. For to found the civilization of one country clean, secure, and solid is to start processes of change in every nation and in every country, to greatly urge over the time when nowhere on the habitable globe shall poverty and the preventable evils of life continue to exist. These are no dreams. The accomplishment of this end is within the scope of our realized knowledge. We know much. Let us insist that this knowledge is applied to life and not to a group here and a group there, except as a stepping stone, but to all groups, to all classes, to all nations and empires as a whole. When well-being is established as a permanent condition, then we can demand a level of efficiency and responsibility in the individual citizen, which will now be chimerical. Let me read that again. When well-being is established, when they get their perfect little world, everybody's set at the same wage, living in the same kind of house with the same amount of food, everybody's the same temperature in their thermostat. When well-being is established as a permanent condition, then we can demand a level of efficiency and responsibility in the individual citizen, which would be now chimerical. Whatever chimerical means, C-H-I-M-E-R-I-C-A-L. To demand efficiency and responsibility, responsible conduct from the poorer of our fellow citizens, now is to demand this from the bodies and brains enfeebled by improper and insufficient food, hardened by dull and galling labor, their initiative and self-reliance bound around with the meshwork of poverty, and their feet insecure upon this sliding morass, which may any day land them in the pit of destitution. But the responsibility is ours who know, who understand, although only a little, who can see clearly that mind and organization can rescue men from these conditions. Ours the responsibility to use the powers we see, ours the faith to suffer, for our refusal if we let the time for using these powers go by. And if indeed it prove necessary, as it may well do, that the state and the municipality extend the sphere of their functions and acquire control over many kinds of businesses and private undertakings, at present run as private enterprises, then we must face these changes also, only realizing that a reconstruction of our machinery, outlined in the next chapter, will be a requisite, and a remembering that the power of ruling and of management and of direction must always be secured to be the right of knowledge and of wisdom, and not of prejudice or party interest. The social changes and the reconstruction of democracy must go hand in hand. The working out of such a plan in England will not interfere with our existing relationships with other powers, nor with our position as a world empire. But the security and well-being we obtained in England, it must be our endeavor to spread to all subjects of the empire everywhere, to India, to the Negro races, and to our colonies, insofar as they may be led to copy our example. And on the basis of an internal national security, it may be increasingly possible to build a world security, to found the peace of the world securely on the rock of international agreement and federalization, so that the sword of war will not be lifted. Oh my, they're going to make sure that they bring about this new age and this new world order, and they're going to say it's for our benefit and to avoid war, and they want to control businesses and everything. And penal colonies, prisons, for the wasters and idlers and drunkards, etc. And destitute. For as we enable the bodies of men to be better built, the civilization made of those men will be saner, better balanced, showing forth more of that divine wisdom which guides the world and only waits for us to provide the sound vehicles through which it may manifest. And with this wisdom will grow the sense and responsibility, and so the peace be established forever, and war be a story of old times. It may be pointed out also that a state so founded on the well-being and security of its citizens would be a state which had hugely increased its markets for all kinds of products. The demand for food, clothes, furniture, houses, and all the necessities and luxuries of life would increase. For whom? The people getting the barely minimum wage? Countries wage war to obtain possessions of lands which may serve as markets for their products. And here at our doors is a market greater than the whole of Africa. Wealth would circulate freely, prosperity would abound, and because founded solely, there would exist the possibility of social growth and high individual development such as exists not today. And beauty could grow. Beauty which now hides its head away from the hearts of men and exists only as an advertised luxury, an ornament, added at cost to some bare necessity. That which grows harmoniously and securely is beautiful, and common life in the future, as it has been in the past, will be beautiful because founded upon the security and order which is the first necessity of beauty. To grow, to grow. That is the keynote. Man is set here in this glorious world to develop all his powers. He is emerging from a period of disorder, ugliness, pain, and confusion because it was necessary for him to learn the need of order and beauty for himself, to know it and not only to have it been told. But the old day is dying and a new is dawning. And if we now set our hands and our hearts to the work, then a truth of our day we shall see for founding of that wondrous world civilization of the future, in which the spiritual evolution of man shall go on to heights undreamed of. But to do this, we must do our part, must keep clearly in view the purpose of which we are here, the duty we have to perform, and see that in the light of that duty and that purpose, we do the first things first, and found our state secure on the well-being of its citizens. So at least there be no mistake about it. Alan Greenspan said to the USA Congress that they were running a program called economic destruction. And the one senator said, well, won't some people get hurt, Alan? And he said, yeah, some people will get hurt. So in order to bring about this new world order, they have to destroy everything, like the Conchita Wurst singer singing the Phoenix Rising. It's part of the occult. The old phoenix needs to burst into flames before the new phoenix can be born. So they believe, like the Hegelian dialectic, they have to destroy everything to bring about their new world. It's called the ends justifies the means. And if that means they have to kill 6 billion people for their utopia, so be it, I suppose. But I think it's all a ruse and a deception, part of the Luciferian satanic cosmology, as is written and prophesied in the Bible and other books. Jesus was real. Jesus was crucified. Jesus did rise again. And so, apparently, according to the Bible, if you believe that, you will be saved. Or if you take the mark of the beast, you will not be saved. So again, I think it has all kind of things, something called soul snatching. I think the Luciferian satanic dimension, something behind the veil that you can't see, like you can't see me right now. Where the heaven would be where God is and Jesus is and the angels are. In this other dimension, I don't want to call it hell or whatever it is where the angels from heaven, a third of them apparently were cast out and are now called demons or unclean spirits or whatever. And then of course we have the material reality where I am sitting in the backdrop here, where you are. So we can identify those 3 realms at least, and according to the Rosicrucian and the other occult material, the secret doctrine, the cosmic theology, religion of the cosmos, the skies, the stars. There's supposed to be 7 realms that separate humans from the ultimate God. Something like that. Which we will get into that. Because the name of this series is Freemasonry and Satanism. And both of those doctrines, both of those religions, Freemasons, Illuminati, Rosicrucian, witchcraft, Zionism, and many others that we've been talking about, Kabbalah, apparently are one and the same. I mean, are there people involved in these things that don't know what they're involved in? Members who belong to the Freemasons who are not aware that they are being reeled in and they don't know it. Just like me or anybody else, we all make mistakes. We're all sinners. I'm not trying to be a preacher here. To me, this is very much scientific information. If there are other dimensions, and there are things called divas and angels and demons and ghosts, and are these being disguised as aliens, greys, and reptilians? Aleister Crowley, the evilest man alive, who was into child sex and child sacrifice magic rituals to communicate with the other side, drew a picture of Lamb and Hiawas, the beings he was in communication with, and they looked just like gray aliens. Whitley Strieber's book, on the cover you see the gray alien, and much of the UFO research, they got these little gray aliens, like little ETs. So apparently these beings can manifest. And like the Illuminati, when they have the ritual where they sacrifice somebody on an altar, it's usually a child. And they're in human form, but apparently they can shape-shift into a reptilian shape, and they viciously attack and bite and eat and drink the blood of the victim. They turn into some gross creatures. And apparently the leader of these creatures is called the Pindar, according to Arizona Wilder, in an interview with David Icke. Look it up. All right, moving along. Resume of necessary reforms. And I mean, I'm really not trying to bash every sentence and paragraph in this book. Some of it sounds like well-intended activities. But I can't also not lie to myself. It is the Theosophical Society. Annie Bessette's on the cover here. And it does say Social Reconstruction. Annie Besette is a member of the Theosophical Society, took control of the Lucifer Publishing Company, or the Lucifer magazine. Either Annie Besette or Alice Bailey, and started by Helena Blavatsky and others. So I'm just not going to be convinced that Satan is the good guy. Look what world we can all look back on and say, oh my God, the death and mayhem, chaos and anarchy. It just goes on and on and on. And now the government, according to a press release I showed on one of my previous videos, many, 47 was it, or 67, federal agencies are stocking up on $1.3 or $4 billion worth of weapons. So they're gearing up with all these weapons while they're doing all these crisis situations, like the gay bar shooting in Orlando, and then demonizing gun ownership. So on one hand, the powers that want to reconstruct society are arming up seriously, while they seriously want to disarm the public and demonize gun ownership. The assumption of the state of the obligation to so organize itself as to give well-being for all. That's one of their necessary reforms. So the state is obligated to the well-being of all, and there's no casual labor, so you will be assigned a regular job, and you can go to a penal colony for idling, wasting, drunkard, etc. Destitution. This must be done by organizing the labor market and controlling wages so that every adult is economically able to provide the material conditions for well-being for himself. This organization must base itself upon the economic independence of every adult and of every family through the adults. Suppose you'll have to get a permit to get married and have children. But likely many people won't have that kind of job to afford that kind of lifestyle, so you'll probably have to be sterilized in this new age and new world order. If you're not neutralized, murdered, because they don't need you, useless food eater. Just me adding up what I've been researching. They think we are cattle, profane. They say it. It's their words, not mine. H.G. Wells says we're animals not to be trusted. Page 42. Those most in need to help must be dealt with first. That is, those at the base of the social structure. So the poor need to be organized first. No social changes, no reforms must be dealt with before these elementary things have been done. Unless men are guaranteed well-being and economic independence, no social changes, however excellent in theory or in intention, will be helpful or useful. We must be prepared for the state through the local authorities. There's another little tidbit I learned. I don't know if all this is true that I'm sharing, but apparently 130,000 people who come back from Iraq in the war, military personnel, have been hired by Walmart. And a lot of people think that they're preparing these facilities as supply centers or FEMA camps or whatever. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. We must be prepared for the state, through local authorities and representatives of government departments, to take over and manage various kinds of industry necessary for the community. This will necessitate alteration of the social machinery of administration, as indeed will all changes outlined. This reconstruction of democracy must go hand in hand with social changes. This reconstruction of democracy must go hand in hand with social changes. So they need to deal with the those who need the help most, the poorest people, and then they need to take over industries. So I suppose they'll put those poorest people in those jobs like their job factories, prisons. All right, moving along, a new chapter here. Present methods of government. The Theosophic Society, Social Reconstruction, 1912, by the same people who are responsible for the New Age and New World Order. One world government, people. One world religion. One world currency. Everybody controlled. In Great Britain at the present time, government is carried on partly by national and partly by local authorities. I'm going to skip over some of this material. Try to move along on this video. Page 44. Government for the people, by the people, is an idea which has been interpreted as government by the largest number of votes of the largest number of male persons, and this idea has gradually triumphed until the present government proposes to bring in a manhood suffrage bill, to be probably amended by the addition of womanhood suffrage, so that all the adults in the nation will have the power of voting at election time. Now, regrettably, and I'm a person who likes democracy, but what do you do when a good portion of the people allow themselves to be duped and deceived? And these people make decisions and vote for people who promise them the deceived ideas. Common sense doesn't prevail. So rulership by the masses is a bad idea, and uneducated masses. I'll agree to that. You know, they can be talked into pedophilia being normal when you get the educational institutions and magazines and newspapers owned by the evil forces promoting such philosophy and theory, which is being done. Transgenderism, you know, people biologically changed and altered with computers and other things to make them part human and part robot. Crazy things coming that anybody can look up. So, women's suffrage, so that all adults in the nation will have the power of voting at election time. It is undoubtedly desirable that women should be put on the voters list on the same terms as men, but it is surely possible to devise a method of government which shall more fully answer the needs of the nation than our present clumsy expedients. How does our democracy get its work done at present? If we take any individual consistency of large number of voters who are not currently informed on public affairs, and at election time vote for candidates, and usually it's because it's a good-looking guy or it's a woman or something, or they come up with some bizarre platform like they support the gay agenda, and everybody will vote for them. So then the other candidates have to say they support the gay agenda, or they won't get into office. The psychology mind control is rampant right now. Vote for candidates in whose selection they have no real voice on issues that they are very partially comprehend. So they promise people that nuclear power is going to be cheap for you, but then they don't mention that there's no way to dispose of the waste. In the end, it's going to cost a lot more than that cheap fuel, energy. The actual selection of the candidates who will be put before the constituency, the people, is made by committees of the local organizations who are, for the most part, self-elected caucuses. And these committees very often indeed bow to the wishes of the central committees of the political parties who wish for their own reasons to put this or that individual forward. So no matter who you vote for, if they're part of the Republican Party, they have to listen to their bosses. If they're part of the Democratic Party, they have to listen to their bosses. And strangely enough, the people who control the the bosses of the Republican and Democratic Party are the same power mongers, banksters, Illuminati types. So they control both parties. These reasons are frequently purely financial. That is to say, that if any otherwise respectable person is willing to put up money to fight the contest and perhaps make an additional contribution to party funds, he may very easily arrange that the electors of the constituency shall offer him as their candidate. So again, if you do join the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, and you make sure that you let them know you would do what you are told to do, they will probably promote you. And they come out of the Masonic lodges and get support, etc. The local caucus will then arrange a local party meeting at which a sprinkling of the party electors will hear Mr. So-and-so make a party speech, and after hearing this, they will duly pass a resolution inviting him to contest the consistency. And when candidates are at once selected, there is practically no chance of another individual coming in. The independent candidate is almost certain to be unsuccessful for the simple reason that he has no party machinery to fall back on. So just anybody can't get into this game. You don't have a political machine to back you up. This procedure means that while the selection of candidates is done with the acquiescence of those members of the electorate who are actively and energetically interested in local politics, it is certainly not done by the majority of the electorate, the people. So they go on to describe here how they will fix that problem and require mandatory education for people who want to vote. You have to take classes on a regular basis, it says here. So I'll just read the last paragraph. Our present democratic organization is in reality a makeshift. It is a way out of the difficulty of all oligarchy control, a state on the road to the reconstruction of a really organically built society, and there is extremely little reality behind the phrases and pretenses with which it is decked out. Everyone who has gone through a parliamentary election knows that the phrase government by the people for the people is more Shabbat than the state is truly governed by a comparatively few persons who make use of the party machinery. So the oligarchy, where the elites rule, is still probably continuing. They just put up a false front of political people who are good looking and can speak well and impress people to get elected. Page 50. The main principles of democratic reconstruction. In considering the outline of the method of democratic reconstruction, two considerations should be borne in mind. Firstly, that any detailed change in machinery must be regarded as secondary to the social changes already indicated. Secondly, that detailed change in machinery must necessarily be spread over a long period. So whatever they do, they have to spread it over a long period so the people never see it coming. The present system, both of local and national administration, is much more complicated than it need be, and there is not sufficient organic relation between the national and the local authorities and between the different kinds of national and local authorities. We should at least hold the idea in our minds of a system of government which, starting with the smallest parish, council area, should go upward step by step, council to council, until we finally reach Parliament itself. This is the purely administrative or business side of the matter, but the quite distinct problem connected with our method of selecting representatives must be also considered. A member of the Parliament is elected by the registered voters of a particular area, and having been elected, takes his place as a member of the Legislative Assembly, which deals with the work of the nation as a whole. And here in the United States, I've noticed many times, you look at the last names of the senators, representatives, governors, and you're going to see a repeat. So once a family gets into politics, they're generally connected well enough so that they can get their children and generations after them over hundreds of years into these political seats. So basically, they're generally not available to the rest of us. Just an observation if you do a little research. So dynasties get built this way. So what starts out as a fair opportunity for all, if it ever was that way, winds up being a controlled situation where families get in there and they can control money and contracts and all this other stuff. What we need in the world, in my opinion, is a police force to police the politicians. That might make them behave and do their job. But as we all know, they've switcherooed on us from the God's law to the Constitution to the people electing the officials to the corporation, which is now God, who controls the elected officials, the politicians, with money and control. And if anybody gets in their way, like Kennedy, they get assassinated. And then these politicians are told what to do to the people, deceive the people, control the people, rip off the people, steal from the people, murder the people. And then, of course, at the bottom of the pyramid, the people are monitored, surveillance, and I think it's going to lead into the microchipping and possibly a huge, large-scale, artificially created incident to create martial law or something, divide and conquer, riots. I guess they might even try to call it a revolutionary war in America or something, and basically have the people kill off each other. And who's standing on the sideline controlling the whole thing? The corporations and banksters and the elitists, who have caused the whole thing, so that they can maintain control. We have a problem here in the world, and so I make videos so we talk about it. I'm sure I don't have everything right, but I'm reading books. An MP is elected by the people living in a certain place to do the nation's work. A local chancellor is elected by the people living in a certain place to do local work. We pool our national representatives. Why not, to a certain extent, at least our local representatives? A local councillor at present is tied to his area, and as the work of the local authorities is hedged about by kinds of purely or arbitrary restrictions and kept within quite artificial boundaries, a good deal of administrative ability is wasted. And a lot of politicians, like George Bush even said, if he was king, he could get things done faster. He didn't like having to deal with the people. They don't listen to us anyways, and they keep everything from us. Everything is top secret and behind secured walls and all that. We know nothing what's really going on. All right, so enough about the politics. Let's see where I am here. The new machinery will have to be of the nature of a purely business organization, managed to a considerable extent in the way in which an ordinary business is managed. So the new political machinery. Imagine a series of committees of directors of this or that undertaking, chosen from publicly elected persons, or from a panel to be afterwards referred to, of co-optable persons, and we have the business organization of a government of the future, the machinery side, that is, the change in administrative machinery necessary, and the changes in method of election of public representatives are two distinct problems, as been stated above. And while our administrative machinery is certainly defective, our present method of electing representatives for Parliament or for local work is one of the weakest spots in the democratic organization. Nor have we any non-party method of educating the electorate, nor have we any non-party method of educating the people in the knowledge of public questions, nor any method whatsoever of testing their capability of using the vote. So they don't have any way of teaching us about public activities, nor any way of testing us of our knowledge so we can vote. The question can be considered under several heads: the qualifications of and registration of the voter, the size of the election area, and the method of election. We are on the verge of what will amount to adult suffrage, and the problem of the education of the voter on public questions is therefore urgent. The education of the voter is urgent. This should be not left to parties, but become a matter of non-party instruction by the government. So the government's going to have to teach you about the issues you vote on. And these instructions should take the form of definite classes held for all persons between the ages of 14 and 21, at which methods of government, social questions, civic duty, and public affairs generally should be dealt with in a simple and yet thorough manner by men and women appointed as teachers, demonstrators, and lecturers. Attendance of these should be compulsory, and if necessary, the age of half-timers should be raised to make this and other forms of education possible. Every person, before being added to the voter's roll, would be required to show proof of having attended such classes regularly and having attained a reasonable degree of knowledge of the subjects taught. But the voter should be required to keep his knowledge of public questions up to date. And for this purpose, there should be held in every election area, to be defined below, regular public meetings under non-party auspices, in which matters of local and national interest could be discussed by any elector. Wow. With the impartial chairman in control of the meeting. And in order to maintain his name on the register of voters, every person should be required to attend a minimum number of these meetings in every year. So you have to go to these meetings every year if you want to continue to be on the voters' roll. At certain of these meetings, local and parliamentary representatives should attend and give an account of their work and answer questions to public interest. These are quite simple and easy workable suggestions, but they would transform the face of English political life and tend to largely reduce the objectionable features of party warfare. An educated and non-party instructed people would not be susceptible to illegitimate influence, nor would they easily tolerate misrepresentation, either from the platform or through the press. Well, we know right now the evil people control the press, and we're getting some crazy garbage out of the newspapers and all the media talk shows. The aim of the democratic reconstruction should be to do away with the confusion of election areas which at present exist and bring them down to a simple pattern. The determining consideration should be the size and number of population. The object should be to make each unit, election area, an organic social unit with a common life and expressing a large degree of consciousness of itself as a social entity. The education of the voters and the regular non-party political meetings referred to above would make this possible, but the number of persons forming such a social unit is necessarily limited, probably not extending beyond a few thousand, and the area in which they live is important, as to not scattered a common life is not possible. At these meetings, and the most capable men and women in the district would naturally come forward so that they would be elected for local service almost before they ever went up for election by the ballot. And an election of this character is the soundest and most satisfactory kind of election. A group of such areas would form a parliamentary constitutionary. For instance, and here again the habit of each area regarded itself as a social entity would make elections more expressive of the real will of the people than any mere piling up of votes, although the voting would, of course, continue. Method of election would continue to be by ballot. No doubt that the different parties would continue to make their party appeals, but under different conditions. The real election would be made in the statutory public meetings, and the parties would have to deal in vital questions of public interest in matters of principle and not of prejudice and ignorance if they wished to get the support. The ballot box would be registered. The ballot box would only register opinions soundly conceived. It is not my intention here to more than indicate main lines of Reconstruction, and therefore I do not attempt to go into detailed consideration involved in this adaptation of this online plan to existing conditions, outline plan. Probably in the end it would be sufficient to have two classes of election areas. The smallest unit area from which all local representatives would be elected, and the parliamentary areas consisting of federations of such areas from which parliamentary and perhaps the more importantly country and inter-county representatives could be elected. So it goes on to talk about that. Just a couple more pages here. The finish of this book is kind of interesting. The machinery of government might well consist of the hierarchy of parish, the church, urban, rural district, county councils, as it does now, but these should be linked up with national government directly and strengthened by the appointment of committees for administration of various services on business lines, as already suggested. And it would add stability and value to this machinery if the chairman and perhaps the vice chairman of each body were nominated to it from its own body and from a panel of co-optable persons by the authority above it or by some government departments. Besides the elected element, as a greater use should be made of our existing powers for the co-opting of the various committees of persons distinguished in the work, education, or public health for which committees exist. The attainment of inclusion in this panel might well come to be regarded as a reward for public service in the fields of science, politics, and literature, religion, or in any other way useful to humanity. Organizations on the lines considered concerns not only for the external machinery, but the much more important factor, the social mind of the community. And more as our civilization increases in complexity and becomes aware of its responsibilities, will it be necessary to undertake reconstruction on these lines. From the administrative point of view, under some sure party business scheme, English local affairs would be managed by a network of councils and committees adapted to the very numerous different functions necessary on purely business lines. The committee or council or governing body controlling water supply or electric supply or interlocal transit by tramways and light railways would be as large as need be and operate over the total area, just as a business company would, whereas the authority for managing local paving or the parish hall would be as small as convenient and deal with limited matters. But we must look on the matter from the standpoint of the men and women who will control the machinery also. It was said earlier that we must look to those more evolved than their fellows for directing wisdom and self-sacrificing service, which shall enable social reconstruction to be carried out. So they have to find people who are more evolved than others. It is these persons who must largely staff the network of local councils and committees before referred to, and these must also be elected to Parliament. And this means not only the different people must replace some of those at present doing this work, but perhaps even more than those at present doing this work must wake up to a sense of their responsibilities and a knowledge of their place in evolution. Such men and women would naturally come to the front of the statutory public meetings in the unit election areas, such as the incapable would naturally show forth in their incapacity and their pretense. But to increase this sense of responsibility, the rapid permeation of all classes of thinking of people by theosophical ideas is imperative. So they have to get you to be understanding the theosophical ideas. Those who are in positions of power and authority, however limited this may be, must be men and women who believe in God's plan for the world, evolution, and who are in their own way and in their own sphere doing what they can do to help this on. Without such a permeation of thought, without such a feeling of duty, such a belief in the reality of the evolving spirit, under the guise of every day, among those carrying on the public work, no mere change in machinery, no new provision of legislation would prove effective. The change here implied in those older in evolution will inevitably be followed by a corresponding change in those younger. So I guess what they'll do is they'll seek out people who have been reincarnated more times than other people, hence more evolved. I do realize this is a long and thoughtful conversation, but this is the Theosophist Society. These are the same people as the Rosicrucians, the Freemasons, the Illuminati, and all these people into this religion that they've created of cosmology. So more evolved are people who have been reincarnated more times, I guess, who are more intelligent and have more wisdom in their spirits. The change here implied in those older in evolution will inevitably be followed by a corresponding change in those younger. Men being in the fact older and younger in evolution, a stable system must be based on the acknowledgement of this fact. But the acknowledgement is not easy to put into machinery until it is first felt in the hearts of men and realized in their intelligence. And this acknowledgement means greater responsibility for older and younger alike, responsibility to do the duty which is before them at the stage where they are. It will, however, be easier both to assume and to discharge these responsibilities in a society in which social consciousness and public spirit are deliberately educated, and this education made part of the fabric of public life. Great strides forward are being made at the present in the direction of social reform. Schemes of the vastness not before contemplated are not only proposed but carried into law. But we lack the certain knowledge of world law, which is spiritual science of Theosophy gives, and we lack the social organization that can build firmly on that law. Changes such as these can only be accomplished with any degree of perfection by an increasing realization of the omnipresence of law in the mental, moral, and spiritual life no less than in the physical. We must look in the future to the deepening of the sense of the varieties of religion under whatever form and whatever guise. The state of the future indeed may deem it wise not to disestablish or to disendow this church or that, but to establish or endow every church, chapel, religious, or ethical organization which has sufficient claims on the public support to justify its help. So will the organizations of the state come out of the confusion of the present into serenity, all its parts and all its sections of its people doing different work, discharging different functions, each doing its work, knowing it necessary for all, doing this because of the recognition of duty and place in evolution will come to be one of the fundamental conceptions, not only of the philosopher, but of all men and of everyday life. If changes of the magnitude and on the scale of those outlined are to be brought about, then society must make ready for them by understanding and by investigation of social and of spiritual questions, and by becoming permeated throughout its length and breadth by ideas of high service. Wow, this sounds like communism. The spread of the theosophical ideas will make this more easily possible in the modern world by giving to it a science of the mind and of spiritual things, which shall enable it to perceive again, through the medium of scientific thought, the truths of religion, which once were seen by faith. The presence of God in the world, the existence of a divine plan of evolution for the world, are for the theosophist not abstractions, but certainties and realities. Our duty of conforming our little human plans to the great plan of helping to work out our human destiny to its divine end. And in the present we shall have an especial duty, and this is a time of great change and of a great reshaping of life. At such times in the world's life, the great hierarchy of divine beings who rule and direct our evolution send forth from themselves one whom we know as the world teacher. He has been in the world as a founder of Egyptian, Greek, and Indian religion, as Hermes, Zoroaster, Orpheus, Buddha, Krishna, and latest of all, as Christ. Him we expect now to proclaim the external varieties, to re-unveil the profoundest religious truths, to set again on its way the new and more splendid civilization which shall emerge out of the plan and confusion of the present. Ours is to prepare the way, to be ready to carry out his commands, to be ready to build as he shall direct. Who is this he? Let me read that last paragraph one more time. And in the present we have an especial duty, for this is a time of great change and of great reshaping of life. At such times in the world's life, the great hierarchy of the divine beings, what divine beings, who rule and direct our evolution, send forth from themselves. So the divine beings, not divine being, will send forth from themselves one whom we know as the world teacher. He has been in the world as the founder of Egyptian, Greek, Italian, Indian religion, as Hermes, Zoroaster, Orpheus, Buddha, Krishna, and latest of all as Christ. So they're saying Jesus was just a reincarnation of one of these other guys. Him we expect again now to re-proclaim the external varieties, to re-unveil the profoundest religious truths, to set again in its way the new and more splendid civilization, which shall emerge out of the plan and confusion of the present, ours to prepare the way, to be ready to carry out his commands, to be ready to build as he shall direct. Wow. So some other books here they recommend. I'll probably try to get some of them. The Riddle of Life, Annie Besant. The Life After Death, Ledbetter. The Outline of Theosophy, Ledbetter. First Steps in Theosophy, Mallet. Elements of Theosophy, Lillian Egger. Ancient Wisdom, Annie Besant. Seven Principles of Man, Annie Besant. Reincarnation, Annie Besant. Karma, Annie Besant. Death After and After, Annie Besant. The Astral Plane, Ledbetter. The Divanchian Plane, Ledbetter. Man and His Body, Annie Besant. The Birth and Evolution of the Soul, Annie Besant. The Key to Theosophy, Blavatsky, Helena Blavatsky, the one who created the Lucifer magazine and the Lucifer Publishing Company. Esoteric Buddhism, Senate. The Growth of the Soul, Senate. To Those Who Suffer, Amy Bleach. Popular Lectures on Theosophy, Annie Besant. Alright, just a few more. Fragments of a Faith Forgotten, Mead. Esoteric Christianity, Annie Besant. Four Great Religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, and Christianity, Annie Besant. The Christian Creed, Ledbetter. Did Jesus live 100 years BC? Mead. The Gospel and the Gospels, Mead. The Esoteric Basis of Christianity, Kingsland. And then they got some pamphlets, The Unseen World, Purgatory, The Heaven World, Guardian Angels, Reincarnation, The Law of Cause and Effect, Power and the Use of Thought, What Theosophy Does for Us. So there you have it, and then they got some more publications. You can get books on the occult, Theosophy and Occultism in Fiction, and this is all tied in with the Rosicrucians and the Freemasons. And of course, the Jewish people have their Kabbalah, Talmud, the Zohar, these books I'll be going over. So you don't think that these people are up to something. A new age and a new world order, as George Bush Sr. said. Out of chaos and anarchy will come the new world order. The law of, the rule of law, he said, not the law of the jungle. So I think it's important for people to wake up and see, seemingly in 2016, things are kind of moving along a little faster for these people to want to bring about their new age and new world order, which in my opinion is, per the Bible prophecy, Luciferian and satanic, something to do with some beings from the across the veil. You can't see, like you can't see me, but when you remove the veil, you can see them. And apparently with CERN, they're trying to open portals or remove the veil and bring some kind of beings into our dimension. Crazy, you think? Thank you for watching my video, Rick Miracle reporting.